Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It is in the description below. It is your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Please reach out to me directly. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing details. Launched in 2012 and made in 100 pieces, this is the Panerai Radiomir 1940 PAM00784. Now, this watch was made in 100 copies along with a companion, the Oro Rosso or Rose Gold PAM00398. Now, 100 copies of each were made, but 50 examples with matched serials were bound together to create the collective PAM00784. So there were 50 matched sets out of the 100 pieces of each. These are both serial number 20, and they will be sold as a set, but I am going to review them independently. So these videos stand free. Now, the watch you see here is the steel one. So 100 pieces made in the year 2012. It was the original modern-day Radiomir 1940. So Radiomir 1940 recalls the watches made between the original wire lug 3646 of the 1930s and the later 1950s era 6152 with the locking crown guard and the profile that would later inspire the civilian Panerai Luminor. So this was sort of the transition between the two. Not yet with the 6152's locking lever crown, but having dispensed with the more fragile wire lugs of the earlier watch. So watches that were like this would have included, for example, the 6154 Small Egiziano or the Small Egyptian. So this watch is in the spirit of those transitional case designs. A watch that is large, make no mistake, in steel, 47 millimeters in diameter, 15.2 millimeters thick from lug tip to lug tip, 56.9 millimeters with a 26 millimeter spacing between the lugs. We will throw it on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference. Big has always been the look with Panerai. So the lugs do overlap my wrist a bit, but remember, these things are inspired by combat tools, so we're not talking date justs. If it looks a little bit too big, it's probably all right. As a Panerai, you can see this actually fits fine, even if the proportions are a bit cartoonish. It's supposed to look that way. So I'd say my wrist size, if you want to be safe, 17 centimeters circumference. So I'm 16. You can't go wrong if your wrist is 17 or larger. And it is surprisingly thin, not just because it's not as thick as I expect. It isn't an automatic winder, but it has several tiers on its case flank to allow a sleeve to ramp up and over the side. Now, a little feature that you don't often find on Radiomirs, a combination of screws and bars used to fix the strap. And this is a Panerai Ranger style strap. So with your jeweler's screwdriver, you can easily swap the strap. This isn't like the later and much cheaper pinhole, strap tool hole, spring bar setup that Panerai transitioned to on many models. This is old school. This is how 90s Panerai collectors would do. Screwdrivers and bars, very secure. Contrasting stitch, a little bit of fauxtina to match that of the dial. We have a very raw shear cut side, medium brown color. We have a simple pin buckle in steel. If you're wondering about the differences between the two different editions, you can see that one has an alligator leather strap with a contrasting stitch and a trigger actuated full deploying clasp. So there are some differences here, but both of them are fundamentally of the same size, mechanical specification, and both of them feature plexiglass crystals in tribute to the 1940s and 50s originals. This is a brand new Panerai factory strap. You can see there is no crimping and no gouging. Now, taking a look at the case, you can see that it's really a cushion case profile, which is one of the reasons it wears so well on the wrist. Although the lugs project out, the case itself is bounded. It's about 47 millimeters across and 47 millimeters wide. Now, while it does have a screw-down crown, it's rated at a historically correct 30 meters, because that is close to the rating of the original combat watches. So in reality, I'm sure this thing is more than 30 meters, but for the sake of not tempting fate with a very expensive watch, I suggest you abide by it and consider this to be splash and rain only. Nevertheless, it is a screw-down crown with what appears to be a 1970s inspired interlocking Panerai OP logo. So we've got that lovely off-axis plexiglass distortion. You could see the reference on the case flank, not universal on Panerai watches. On the dial, a stencil, so a matte stencil, matte black, with cutouts for the numerals and the indices, and then a solid block of loom underneath, a disc of loom underneath a stencil, which creates both a lot of luminescence, but also a three-dimensional effect that is somewhat eerie. These tiered stencil-based dials, or sandwich dials, date back to the 1930s and are a part of Panerai lore, not a constant feature of Panerai watch design, but something that pops up on a fairly regular basis and is closely associated with the brand. When you flip this over, and you'll find the same on the PAM00399, this is a beautiful movement and quite a step beyond what you'll typically see on a time-only Panerai watch. In fact, most of their tourbillon watches are not finished this well. If you know Minerva, you know that Minerva out of Villeret was purchased by Richemont back during the 2000s and handed over to the budding Mont Blanc watchmaking operation as the haute horlogerie arm. Minerva makes a few hundred movements a year, some of which go into its own Mont Blanc watches and some of which go into lucky models from other Richemont brands. And how this got into the case is a story of Minerva and Panerai coming together to create a watch that is a rare Panerai reference that's actually about the movement as much as everything else. So this is the caliber 16-17 Minerva, which Panerai calls the OP27. It is 37 millimeters plus in diameter. This is an enormous 37.52 millimeter in diameter, meaning the movement itself is properly of pocket watch origin, the same as the original Panerai combat watches would have been, first Rolex and then later Angelus, and so it properly fills this enormous case too. It's a manual wind with a 55-hour power reserve, a beat rate of 18,000 vibrations per hour, and then a lovely hand-shaped overcoil hairspring, so in every position the centered mass of the overcoil means the watch is going to keep very consistent time. Now the finish is world-class too, although not quite on a Romain Gaultier or Greubel 4C level. It's solidly competitive with the likes of, for example, Vacheron, Patek, and F.P. Journe, which is impressive stuff given that Panerai typically bases its movements on mass-produced architectures and in a previous regime pretty much used ETA calibers exclusively. So Minerva, or Mont Blanc Villeret, is a much needed upgrade if you're into calibers and you want to wear a PAM. Take a look at the black polish of that swan's neck fine adjustment mechanism. Take a look at how broad and mirrored those bevels are on the edge of the bridges. The screw heads are black polished with chamfered slots and circumference. We have engine turning on the base plate. There's even a little bit of beveling inside the wheels. We have solarization on the immense mainspring barrel, as well as on the crown wheel core and the ratchet wheel. You can really see how chamfered that screw atop the ratchet wheel is, and then there's a lovely black polished click that's adjacent to the ratchet wheel. You can see that the teeth of the crown wheel as well as the ratchet wheel have been polished independently, and then we have lovely abrasive wheel stripes across the bridges, not the stamped type of Côte de Genève that you often see on Panerai movements. This is really something special, and with that huge mainspring barrel, which you can see almost extends all the way to the pivot of the center wheel, we get that 55-hour power reserve with an enormous balance that's almost the radius of the movement. A very, very special display. We'll do one more quick loom shot because every Panerai video deserves at least two. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com if you're interested in this PAM00399. But if you view the video anytime close to the time it's posted, keep in mind that we are selling the two, the 398 and the 399, as a set. This is PAM784, and we're going to keep it that way. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for pricing.